Today we're going to talk about getting more out of each underwater kick, and the strategy we're going to use is flipper kick. This is a key skill because if athletes can't create propulsion underwater, they're not going to be able to create speed underwater. So what creates speed underwater? Well, underwaters are fast because there's a lack of resistance. They're getting much less drag under the surface, and because they're in streamline, they're getting even less drag. However, propulsion is still key. They need to move a lot of water over a longer distance, and they need to do it fast. If they miss one of those three steps, they're going to be missing out on the ability to create more speed. And a key skill in underwater kicking, one that many athletes struggle to do, is to kick through the center line. So if you look at the athlete on the left, she's kicking well past her hips. She's kicking well in front of her body. And you see the same thing on the athlete on the right. There's a straight line from his hands to his hips, and then his feet are well in front of the body. And so athletes need to learn how to do that, and they need to learn how to do it fast. And that's going to help them create more propulsion with each kick. And if they fail to do so, they're just going to be kind of going to tempo, and that can be effective for some athletes. But even then, they can probably go even faster if they learn to get more out of each kick. So that's the skill we're going to try to improve. So many times, athletes are simply instructed to kick harder or kick faster. And that's not necessarily going to help them learn how to kick better. And then what they need to do is learn how to get more out of the range of motion. The problem is that this is often misinterpreted as move their hips more, try to undulate more, when that's not necessarily the case. They need to learn how to kick through the center line, which is a little bit different skill. And if they haven't picked up on it yet, they're probably not going to pick up on it just by using sayings like kick harder or use more range of motion or kick faster. It's not necessarily going to just get the job done. In a lot of cases, activities during practice will either help them explore the tempo, they're just trying to kick faster, or they're trying to get more range of motion, so they're exploring that range of motion, but they're just using more undulation, and it's not really being effective in actually creating propulsion. So that's what we need to try to avoid. And so what the skills they lack typically are, one, kicking through the center line, or they may kick through the center line, but it's very slow, and they need to be able to do it fast, or they can do one but not the other, and they fail to do both at the same time. So we need to have activities that help them learn how to do that. So one, they can learn how to kick through the center line, but two, they can actually make it happen at speed, which is what it's all about. So that's what we're going to take a look at next. So this is what I call flipper kick. And so what the athlete's doing is they're trying to kick as fast as possible, and they're trying to create as many bubbles as possible, and they're trying to keep the bubbles up at the surface. And what they're going to have to do to make that happen is kick really fast, and they're going to have to kick through the center line. And so this athlete's making pretty big bursts of bubbles, but what you really want is a steady, sustained stream of bubbles at the surface. That means that athletes are both kicking fast. That means athletes are kicking through the center line and doing fast. So they have to be able to get the tempo up and kick through the center line in order to create a sustained stream of bubbles, which is what they're really looking for. So again, the value is that they have to kick through the center line or else they won't create bubbles. They have to do it fast or they won't be able to sustain those bubbles. And so that's what they're really looking for. You want them to sit up a little bit, but the more they do so, the harder it is going to be to create the bubbles. So you can scale how much they sit up by how effective they are at the activity. And they're trying to keep the head still too. That'll help them have a point of stability, and that'll help them kick through the center line more effectively and keep the tempo up. So it might take a little bit of time for them to get the hang of it, but once they do, and it shouldn't take that long, what's next? How do you make it more difficult? And so one, you can use a tempo trainer, so really force them to hit certain tempos, or you can actually slow the tempo down and have them try to find a way to be able to sustain the bubbles even though they can't just rate up to do so. That's going to be an extra challenge. You can add resistance to their body, so you can use a parachute, a cord, power tower, power rack, any of those type of devices and have them kick against that. The extra resistance is going to make it more difficult. You can get more surface area, so you can use fins, and that's going to slow down their tempo a little bit. They're going to have to kick harder to resist that. Or you can add gravity, so they have to hold a med ball out in front, or just simply raise their arms out of the water to 45 degrees. That's going to push their hips down. It's going to make it harder to kick through the surface. Or you can add resistance to their feet. You can wear drag socks and fins. You can wear drag socks. You can wear shoes. That's going to also slow down their tempo and make it more difficult to kick through the full range of motion. Of course, you can combine these strategies as well. And so all of a sudden, you have a way to really load this too and make this really difficult, and then you can actually really train it. So once they get the hang of getting bubbles up at the surface and holding them, then you can really put the screws to it and really train it hard, and then you're going to have kicking that's bulletproof. And of course, you can interweave this with regular dolphin kicking, all sorts of different types of training. And that's a way to turn this drill into a training activity and that's ultimately what you really want. So what does this really look like? Here's a couple sets that you can use. One's more of a speed-based set, one's more of an endurance-based set. And so what you're doing is you're integrating the flipper kick, and then you're working on some underwaters, or you're working on some underwaters into swimming. To me, simply doing this drill is not going to be as effective as doing this drill in combination with regular underwater kicking and regular underwater kicking and swimming, because that's how they learn how to transition what they can feel and how they're executing that kick into actual underwater dolphin kicking, which is what you really want. So again, the first set is more focused on speed. They're doing a couple flipper kicks to practice it, then they go back underwater, and then they do a little bit more flipper kicking, and they go back underwater, and then transition into their swimming. And on the second set, it's more aerobic, so they're going to practice doing the flipper, and then they're going to do some aerobic swimming where they're trying to be really good underwater, and then they're going to go through that a few times, descending the swims, putting the pressure on the underwater skills a little bit more. And again, this is a very simple introduction, but it can be a really effective way to get more out of their dolphin kicking. This serves as a technical reminder, and also, as I described previously, if you choose to load it up, you can really train it too and make that skill bulletproof. This is one of my favorite activities for helping swimmers get more out of their propulsion and really learn how to kick effectively in a simple way with concrete feedback, because the bubbles go or the bubbles don't go, and that really helps them lock in into a strategy that helps them kick through the center line at tempo, which is what it's all about.